Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the AIME Women's Mortgage Network's Growth Series. This series is here for you to educate, inspire, and share your progress as we lift each other up to new levels. On today's episode, we have a very special guest who is going to share with us why you are the most powerful woman in the room. Lydia Fenet is the Global Managing Director, Strategic Partnerships and Lead Benefit Auctioneer at Christie's Auction House. Lydia has led auctions for more than 600 organizations and raised over $500 million for nonprofits globally. She was named one of New York's most influential women by Gotham Magazine, and today we are going to dive into her book, The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You. Lydia, thank you so much for joining us today. And let's start right at the beginning. Why did you decide to write the book?
Well, Laura, first and foremost, thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be here. And from everything you've told me, everyone who is watching right now is having a banner year. So I know that every single person in this world is experiencing things differently right now, but all I want to say is hello, rock stars. So let's start there. So the question that I always get when I tell people that I wrote a book called The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You is, how did you write a book about the most powerful woman is you? How did this happen? So I like to tell people that about 8 years ago, I started thinking about this book 8 years ago, but I did nothing about this book at all. I didn't write anything about it. I thought about it a lot, but nothing really happened. And so when I start this speech in front of large crowds, I always tell people that I've been for the past 20 years, but it wasn't until I actually did something about it that things started happening. So let's flash back 8 years ago. What do I do? Where do I get all of this energy and this charisma, right? How does this happen? I am the lead charity auctioneer for Christie's Auction House. And in that role, I stand on stage in front of some nights 100 people, some nights 1,000 people. Five or 6 years in a row, I've stood on stage at Madison Square Garden next to Bruce Springsteen in front of 6,000 people. So I feel like I'm really qualified to tell you what it takes to really get out of your box and really how to speak. But one interesting thing was that people would always approach me when I got off stage and say, always women, by the way, how do you do that? How do you get up on stage? I don't understand. I could never in a million years say that I'm so bad at selling. I'm so bad at selling myself. And I would think to myself, but that's not true. I learned how to do this. So if I could learn how to do it, anyone could learn how to do it, right? So 8 years ago, I'm on stage at another one of these events, except in this particular event, I'm standing next to Uma Thurman, which, as you can imagine, feels great. She is an absolute star on every single level and is just an amazing woman. And we are literally at her event for Room to Grow. It's for an organization that helps babies from the age of 0 to 3 who are living without the means and teaches their parents how to parent and then helps them through those first 3 years. So I'm standing next to Uma on stage, and then she introduces the Room to Grow auction, and I start with my gavel, and I slam down my gavel, and I say, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lydia Fenet. I'm here from Christie's Auction House to conduct a very short auction. It'll be short a few bit, otherwise this is going to take forever. I always like to throw in a joke to make the audience laugh. And then I did what I always do when I get in front of a crowd, which is I look down and I try to figure out who's going to be my first bidder. So I throw out to the audience, ladies and gentlemen, the first lot is a beautiful home in Mexico. You're going to be there for a week. Everything is taken care of. You will have plane tickets down there, restaurants taken care of. I'd like to go right now. But at the time I said, who would like to be the person who raises their hand first? And there's a man in the front row. And there's always someone, I'm telling you these things, there's always someone who isn't afraid to put their hand up first because they kind of like to be called out. So I said to him, because I looked at him and he had very thick, dark glasses on, I said, all right, Clark Kent, where are you starting your bidding tonight? And Clark Kent probably would have started a lot less, but I just called him Clark Kent in front of 500 people. So all of a sudden, Clark Kent says, I'll start the bidding at $1,000, which is what I love to hear because it really starts the auction off. So the auction starts going, it's flying. We have 5 or 6 lots. And over the course of the night, I go back to Clark Kent every single time. Because to me, Clark Kent is the guy who, if the audience starts speaking, I can say, hey, Clark, can you help us out? He became Superman. I talked about a red cape. I was just making things up on the fly to keep him interested, to keep him bidding, and to keep the audience interested. It's a little pro tip about speaking. Calling people out always helps. So I finish up and I get off stage. And all of a sudden, guess who's standing next to me? Clark Kent. And I said, hi. He said, I'm Superman. And I said, I know. And in my mind, I'm thinking there's one in every single crowd. You just have no idea. And Clark Kent says to me, more importantly, I'm Uma's agent. And we want to take you out for breakfast because we think you have something special. Well, this is the moment I've been waiting for my entire life, right? I have literally been waiting for this moment since I was 2 years old. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, that would be great. And internally, I'm completely freaking out, as you can imagine. And I go home that night and I sit down and I start thinking, because the interesting thing about that conversation with Clark Kent was that was not the first time I've had that conversation. I've been approached so many times over the years when I get off stage by Goldman Sachs to run a private wealth team, by the Real Housewives of New York City many times, never said yes. I think we can all agree that was LinkedIn. And I can't even explain to you how many other people had a career path that I had not even thought about that they thought I would be good at. And I sat down that night and I said to myself, what do I want to do? And it was the first time I wrote down, write a book about selling, write a book about what I see online with women who are coming up to me saying that they could never sell, write about confidence and power and what that looks like in a feminine setting and how I'm dressed in a bright red dress with huge earrings and not a black suit, because that's not what I am or who I am anymore, because I've evolved over the time that from when I started being an auctioneer to the auctioneer I am now. So I go to breakfast the next morning, and as everyone can imagine, I was hoping to God anyone I had ever met walked into that restaurant and saw that meeting. They did not. But I said to them, I want to write this book. And they said, we think it's a great idea. And it was the first time I felt like this is going to happen. But what they didn't know, what I knew, what they didn't know was that I was pregnant with my first child. And if you've ever had a child, or if you have a child, if you've seen a child, or if you actually have babysat someone else's child, you realize they take a lot of work, a lot. And I had three children in just over 4 years. And so that whole dream I had, that idea that I had talked about, this book that I was going to write, I did nothing. I was barely sleeping and up to my eyeballs in diapers. And how could I have a dream? I was working, doing my charity auctions at night and trying to be as involved with 3 children as I possibly could. And so the funniest thing happened when I was pregnant, at the very end of my pregnancy with my 3rd child. I live in New York City, and I got a call from the New York Times. A reporter had heard about the fact that during the day I worked in an office, and then at night would go out and take auctions. And so she called and said, I was wondering, I remember someone telling me about this maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Has anything, do you still do this? And I said, I do, but I actually have 2 children now, so I have to go home and put them to bed before I go back out, because I don't get on stage till sort of 9 or 10 at night. So I really have to kind of manage all of these different things. And she said, well, that's even better for the piece. Such a reporter. That's even better for the piece. And I said, I'm also pregnant with my 3rd child. She said, well, when is it due? And I said, in about a month. And she said, well, when's your last auction? And I said, in 2 weeks. Because you know what I learned? You actually can do anything you want to, right? So everyone told me I wasn't going to be able to ever take an auction pregnant. That was not true. And in fact, I learned that being pregnant was great on stage, because I would say to the audience, now who's more uncomfortable here? Is it you or is it me? It's not me, because I feel great. So let's get me off the stage so we don't go to the hospital tonight. Just bid as quickly as you can. You've never seen hands come up like that in your life. So here I am, 9.5 months pregnant, taking an auction next to Kelly Ripa, who's about 4'11". I'm 5'11", 9.5 months pregnant. And the New York Times has followed me around the whole day for this day in the life piece. And I'm so wiped out. I basically get into a cab, sleep the whole way home. Baby comes a week later. I think nothing of this piece for months. Because when you have a newborn, what are you thinking about? Nothing. Nothing except surviving. Maybe that's it. Actually, I'll just stop there. All you're thinking about with newborn is surviving and possibly getting more than an hour of sleep. So sort of at the end of that summer, that was the end of March, the end of that summer, one of my best friends asked me, hey, whatever happened to that New York Times piece? And I said, I guess they just killed it. I never heard, maybe it was the photos were unflattering. I'm not entirely sure, but maybe that was it. So I emailed the reporter, and she said, you know what, we actually decided to hold the piece, because if we put the piece out in October, we can talk about philanthropy. Whereas if we put it out in April, it would kind of get lost in the shuffle. So we thought that this was a good thing. And I said, do you mind sending me the transcript? So she sends me the transcript. And the last thing I said before I fell onto that cab seat, when she asked me, so what do you do when you go home at night? I said, well, I'm too busy I'm too wired from being on stage, so I can never like turn a TV on or look at my screen. I have to read a book or write this book that I'm writing. I wasn't writing a book, actually. I'd written a couple of chapters and sent them to my best friend's agent, who said, you have a book in you, it's just not this book. But something about seeing those words on the transcript made me think internally about what I could do and whether I wanted to do it. And so for the next 6 weeks before the piece ran, I wrote a proposal. I cranked it out. It came as easily as anything I've ever written in my entire life. And when the New York Times piece came out, mid-October of 2017, at the bottom of the paragraph, it had the name of the book that I was writing. The most powerful woman in the room is you. Remember what I said about timing earlier? So if that piece had run at the end of April, beginning of April, nothing would have happened. Do you guys remember what happened in October of 2017? The New York Times ran the first piece about Harvey Weinstein and the Me Too movement exploded, right? So what everybody wanted 2 weeks after that piece came out was a book about powerful women. And guess what? I just happened to be writing one. So that day, and for the next 2 days, I got calls from 5 of the major publishing houses in New York City. The next week, I went in one by one to each of the publishing houses. And on the 5th day, Simon & Schuster, one of the largest publishing houses in America, came in with a preempt, meaning it never even went to auction, which is kind of ironic. And they bought my book. Simon & Schuster is located on the 4th floor of the same building that I've worked in for over 20 years. And that is why I say that I had been sitting on top of my dreams for 20 years. But it wasn't until I did something about it that things started to happen. And that is the theme of my entire book. Because I truly believe, just like I did from the age of 2 on, we can all wait around for other people to tell us what they think or what we should do with our lives, or that we should find power from this or from this other thing. Power comes from within. That is exactly where it starts, and that's where it ends. And when you find that power, you are literally unstoppable. And I will tell you, I know everyone right now is juggling so much. Believe me, I know. I have 3 children. We did full homeschooling in spring. We live in New York City. We hadn't even been back there for months until we went back in June. I felt completely out of place, completely overwhelmed. But I kept going back to that message. Doesn't matter what someone throws at me, doesn't matter what life throws at me, as long as I believe that I have the power, ultimately, the rest of it falls in line. So I would encourage all of you, I am sure you are overwhelmed with work, and if you have children with children, and with older parents and worrying about coronavirus, but stay true to yourself and to your power, because that's where this all comes from. And buy my book, because I'm a salesperson, so definitely buy the book. It's really good. It's called The Most Powerful Woman in the Room with You. And it's
everyone you're speaking to are also salespeople, so they certainly can appreciate that. And and it's true, Lydia, wonderful story. I absolutely love that, and you are correct. We all have that power inside of us. And listen, the women that are part of this group, they are the leaders and the go-getters and the people making a difference in so many families' lives, at this particular moment. But sometimes it is difficult. Sometimes it feels a little bit of overwhelming, of trying to be super everything. Mm-hmm. So what is your best piece of advice when it comes to the time of, okay, I'm running a business, I'm overwhelmed there, the kids are being homeschooled, I'm trying to keep everything together. What is your piece of advice for them?
Well, first and foremost, it's one day at a time. And we talked about this, Laura. At this point right now, you cannot control anything that's happening. So my belief right now is the only thing that keeps you sane is flexibility. And understanding that you cannot pin your hopes on a single moment or a day. Are the kids going to go back to school? Is my office going to reopen? These things are things that are beyond our control. So what you can do is focus on Tuesday if today is Monday. What are we doing tomorrow? What do we know is true tomorrow? What can we or me as a person do to control everything during that time? And if it doesn't work out, I will allow myself to be upset because, the greatest thing I've heard about mental health throughout this entire thing is good mental health is about having the right emotion at the right time. So if you want to be sad, be sad. It did not work out. But also understand that every single time something happens, every single time we're experiencing this, we are getting a deeper well from which to draw in the future. There will never be another time like this as long as we live. I say that I actually have no idea. But my point is, that whatever it is, understand that this is just making you more of a solid person for the rest of your life. And this will be a well we can draw back on for the rest of our lives. Flexibility and resilience are two things that we're learning. And those are not things that you will ever learn unless you've been challenged in your life.
Right. And that's very interesting in our industry. I mean, there's been many women that have said to me, Laura, this is when I do my best work. When everything's coming at me, this is really when we shine. And I honestly can say that. You know, it's interesting to me that I think women actually shine the more chaotic it gets. Yeah. It's almost like the more things coming at us, we're like, we've got this. The women are here and we're going to get through this. And I really have seen so much of that. And that makes me very proud. I was saying that before we jumped on live. I'm so proud of all of the women out there in the mortgage industry because they really have just stepped up and made it happen. Now, because we have a bunch of sales ladies on this call right now, I know that you actually have like the 5 keys to selling. So I know we actually didn't speak about this on the podcast episode. So why don't we go through that? Because I think that could be very helpful to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to say to people, because I know that one of the biggest issues that people face with selling, even if you are in a sales role, is the feeling that people often think that they're being rejected personally when something goes wrong. So I always say, whenever it comes to sales, you should think of sales as a gift instead of thinking of it as something personal. Sales is something you are offering to someone, right? It is either a service or a product. It's a piece of you, it's advice or wisdom that you are giving to someone as a gift. And so if you stop looking at it as such a transactional thing, sometimes it makes it much easier. And I often think about this when it comes to somebody who's selling something that's actually theirs. Like when I was doing, and I know we'll talk about this later, Laura, but when I was doing this set of master classes, I had a woman who was a therapist for children. And she said, I always just feel so uncomfortable about the money part of it. The fact that I'm actually selling my services to a parent. And I said, but can you imagine being on the other side of that as a parent? Is there anything that you want more than somebody who can help your child? You are a gift. Your service is a gift to them. And the same in mortgage broker or a real estate agent. Like you're giving someone a home. You're giving somebody a gift of whatever you are providing them. So don't ever think of sales as something dirty. And if that doesn't work for you, then think of sales as a business outside of yourself. Again, you're not selling yourself. You are either giving someone a gift or you are selling a business. So if someone doesn't want something right now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they may not want it 2, 3, 4 months down the road.
Right.
And probably the reason that they're not having it has nothing to do with you. It could be that A, they don't have the money. That's often one of the first reasons you find out in sales. It's not that, they didn't really like those earrings. It was, they actually couldn't afford them. And B, I also think that the other thing that people often don't think about in sales is a lot of times you're internalizing your own issues. So you think that somebody doesn't want to buy something from you because you look like this or you do this. Has nothing to do with that. So try to take the personal out of it. So those are a couple. The other things I would say are always be authentic in your selling voice. And especially as women, it's something that so many of us default to until we get to the point where we feel strong enough to really sell in our own skin. And when I told you, I stand on stage in red dresses with big earrings, but when I started in a black suit. It's because the only people I've ever seen as auctioneers before me were men who wore black tie. So I assumed when I got on stage, when I was 24 years old, that I had to dress up in armor, literally a black suit, to arm myself for this job. But that's not who I am. I'm warm and friendly. I love joking. I love having fun. And so when I started to feel more confident on stage, all of a sudden I started wearing things that I wanted to wear. Bright colors, big earrings, lots of personality, lots of discussion about self, for better or for worse. But the point is that for somebody who's out in the audience, all of a sudden they're seeing me selling, not the gentleman that I was trying to be to fill that role. Absolutely. So if you learn from someone else, just once you have enough confidence within you and you feel like you can fake it till you make it, and then you feel like you've made it, allow yourself to really draw deep into that authenticity of what makes you you and bring that to the table. because people love to see that. And I think that's when people respond. I mean, I feel, Laura, I feel like I've known you for, we did a podcast together and we did this. We've been together for maybe 40 minutes, and I feel like I already know you so well.
I feel the same way. Absolutely. Right. And I think that's an advantage that we have as women. I always say we have such an advantage because each one of us are unique. We're all different. We all have our own personalities and our uniqueness. And if we just, like you said, take the armor away or the mask that we're wearing for other people and just allow our true selves to shine, there's nothing more beautiful in the world.
And people respond. People love feeling like they know someone. You know, there's something so great. I mean, even when I get off stage, what did I say about Clark Kent, right? You know, Clark Kent wants to know me. Clark Kent wants to be my friend. But I feel like I get off stage emitting and sort of emoting that warmth to the audience, and then they feel like we're friends. So I can't tell you how many times in New York City I've been seated at a restaurant or in a grocery store where someone has come up and said, you were the auctioneer for name the charity. I was the whatever I called out, like the woman in the purple dress, you know, the man with the silver hair, you know, whatever I said, all of a sudden that they became part of that universe, right? That universe that I was creating. And I think that is so much about sales. It's understanding who your audience is and being part of that for that moment and for that sale.
I love it. Love it. All right, Lydia, please tell us, speak about, I know you're working on a masterclass. You actually have something in the process right now. So please share that with us. And finally, how can people get your book, follow you, you know, kind of see how you progress?
All right, I'm going to sell myself because that's what I love to do. So the book is called The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You. It is hot pink and it looks great everywhere. You can put it on the bookshelf. You can put it on a table. If you buy it, please send me a picture or a DM on Instagram because I love to share the different ways that people have styled the book. It makes me so happy. And my Instagram is my name, Lydia Fenet. I have the only Lydia Fenet in anything. So if you ever need to find me, Twitter, LinkedIn, Lydia Fenet, Instagram, Lydia Fenet. But Instagram for me is really my main vehicle. I always say that you should really focus on one social media vehicle because otherwise it's too overwhelming. So I really focus on Instagram, and I think you get a really good sense of what I'm doing on a daily basis and also my life with 3 kids and the book and a job and all of those things. And so just actually at the beginning of August, I had this idea for a masterclass because I get so many people reaching out about different topics that I figured if I just put it out there, we would see whether or not it worked. And so I started the masterclass at the beginning. It was Thursdays at 4 p.m. The first Thursday I did How to Nail a Sale, and I sold out the class in 2 hours. So I only do 25 seats. The seats are $200 a piece, which I know is a lot. I'm not saying that it's not a lot, but I wanted to keep it small and tight so that I could really focus on the questions. I do 45 minutes of presentation and then 45 minutes of questions. The second one was You Are What You Negotiate. The third one was How to Rock Public Speaking. And the fourth and final one is this Thursday. It is The Art of Networking. I still have 4 spots left. So if you are interested, feel free to DM me on Instagram. Otherwise, if you want to set up a small session or if you have a group of friends who want to do something, reach out. I always love doing anything. The answer is always yes. So happy to talk about anything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I love the book. Definitely highly recommend everyone read the book. It definitely is worth the while. And Lydia, we thank you so much and we wish you success in the future. Be well. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you for the support. You're an amazing woman. And I look forward to watching your star rise.
Thank you.